Well, great day, everyone, and welcome to Spirit and Mind. We're so glad that you are with us today. Of course, I'm Bishop Robinson, and grateful to have my colleague, Dr. Jonathan Shepard, with us. Great day, Dr. Shepard. How are you today?
Good morning or afternoon now, Bishop. I'm doing pretty good. It's been an exhausting week, and I'm sure we're going to talk about some of those things that made me exhausted, might be making the people out there exhausted. But I'm glad to be alive. Just another day that the Lord has kept me.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're grateful for all of God's grace and allowing us to have another opportunity to share with you our spirit and mind family. So grateful for you, Sister Catherine Jones and Angela Pinckney and Juanita Henderson and Anthony Rhodes and Charlotte Green. Mama Laverne Jones, and so grateful for you, and Sister Hackshaw, grateful to have you with us today, and Deacon Farrar, so grateful that so many of you are joining us today for Spirit and Mind, and of course we're praying for you, and I'm praying with you as we go through this pandemic season. Our schools in many parts of the country are still closed, and some of them that thought they would be back pushed back their schedules a little bit more, as I understand, right here, even in the state where we are. And so we're planning, but there's fluidity, and this situation is still very fluid. And we have a wonderful opportunity every week to get updates from Dr. Shepard. So, Dr. Shepard, update us. What should we know?
Well, sir, there's been so much that is going on. Thank you for mentioning about the school. So the school situation is just so dire right now. I have talked to many of parents who are struggling with their children as they're doing the virtual learning. As you all know, I'm a board certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. And so schools are very important to me because that helps me to see how a child is functioning in his or her own environment. And let me tell you, children are struggling, parents are struggling because the parents are trying to figure out how to be able to keep the child interested in what is being taught virtually. And that's hard. That's very, very hard. And so I pray for all the parents. And when I say that, I don't say that humorously. I don't say that sarcastic, because y'all need prayer. I'm telling you, it is not easy. I can even imagine what you're going through, because when I try to do a telehealth session with a child, I can barely keep him or her attention for about 30 minutes. And so schools are now 5-hour long sessions. And so yeah, it's difficult. I know Bishop knows, because as he teaches on the university level, it's very, very hard. So God bless you all, parents. Second point I'll make is that we are still averaging 40,000 coronavirus cases per day here in the United States of America. That is too many. We're still not doing a good enough job in controlling the spread of the virus. Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is the head of the NIH, who many of you all know has been one of the leading forces and leading voices, I should say, in how do we curb the virus here in the United States of America. He desired for the cases to be at 10,000 per day going into the fall, and we're at 40,000 per day. That's 4 times the amount. So let me just tell you, things may be steady where you're at, but again, this is not the time to ease up. So be aware of that. And the third thing that I will mention, it's a little bit humorous, but it's a true actual disorder that's happening. There is now this disorder called election stress disorder. Election stress disorder. The New York Times wrote about it. And guess what the symptoms are? I'm going to read to you very quickly. There are obsessive refreshing of social media, reading the news alerts to anyone who will listen, and then having a deeply emotional reaction to swing state polling. That is what election stress disorder is. So there are people, and you may even find yourself with some of those symptoms. Election stress disorder. We want to let you know that these are stressful times, but let's not become disordered where we're unable to function. Anytime you see that word disorder means that you're not functioning properly. And even in this tumultuous turmoil and all these other things that are occurring all at one time, I mean, it's almost like the perfect storm. We cannot allow it to cause us to stop functioning properly. So election stress disorder, yes, it's true. For many people, it never even resolved or even quieted down, even after the 2016 election. They're saying that it's even worse now from when we had the last election. And so as things ramp up every single week, don't become stressed out. Last week, I showed you what we need to do in the state of Maryland. If you're going to do your mail-in ballot, make sure that you go ahead, fill out that application. Do not wait to the last 2 weeks to do that because it may not be counted. You want to go ahead and do it today. So make sure that your voice is heard. And I'm not talking about just on the federal level. I'll be done right here, Bishop. I'm not just talking on the federal level. We need to vote for our local governmental officials because those are the people who make the decisions that really control and affect your daily lifestyle. So make sure that when you are completing that ballot, just don't run to the federal. Look up the people, see what their platforms are. Make sure that you're making an informed decision. And I believe that in the end, God's still going to be glorified. He really is. So don't forget that. So those are just some of my parting words or introductory words, not parting, we're not about to go, but introductory words for today. Parting words for this particular part of the show.
But they're parting, Dr. Shepherd, but they're powerful and very helpful. You just reminded us that all the more reason to vote, first of all, because it's not just the federal level, but there's also some local things that affect us even more directly. So there's a lot of reasons among many, and that's just a few of them, to make sure our souls are at the polls. And then secondly, you said something so spiritual in its nuances when you were talking about the perfect storm. All these things coming together, and that just kind of lets you know that it's not just, there's something in science or in the nerd out called chaos theory. And chaos theory says that things that look chaotic in our lives really have more order than they appear to have. There's a convergence of things that have to come together in just the right way and at just the right time in order to produce a certain effect. And so because of that, that's the spiritual side, so that we don't be ignorant of Satan's devices. This is a time of spiritual warfare. There's an election at stake. And as you said, it's messing with people's mental health. And there's public safety issues. There's institutional mistrust. Sociologists say that we live in a time of post-truth. Post-truth is the sociological term. Post-truth means it doesn't matter if my statement or declaration is true. It matters if it gets the result I want. And that's the whole idea behind fake news and manipulating data, is that we live in an age when truth is not as important to the secular culture as getting the desired result, which literally means if I have to manipulate truth or even lie to get where I want to get or the result I want to get, the barometer now is not whether it's true or accurate. The barometer is, did it bring about the desired result? That is the definition of post-truth, that truth is no longer as important as getting what we want. And that's the era and the age we live in. where information is being manipulated. And if ever we needed to do what the scripture says, what Paul told Timothy, to rightly divide the word of truth, we sure do need that now. Wow. You raised some interesting things, because this is an intense spiritual warfare.
Yes.
Institutional mistrust. One group is saying, we're past this pandemic, and one group is saying that's not true, and science is saying one thing, and politics is saying another thing, because science is going for the information and the data, and politics is going for the desired effect that it wants to get from the populace. All these things are converging, and we need the I don't want to get churchy, but we need the Holy Ghost, because his assignment is to lead and guide us into all truth, so that we might know the truth. And so if ever we needed the Lord before, as Grandma used to say, we sure do
need him now. Yes, sir.
So introductory words, but powerful, Dr. Shepherd. Thank you for the update as well. So today, last couple of weeks, we were talking about male conservatism, and we were talking about male perspectives. Today, we're going to introduce something to which we have secondhand knowledge. But next week and in the weeks to come, we'll be introducing some firsthand knowledge persons who have a little bit more, not really a whole lot more experience in this subject. But today we want to talk about the importance of saying her name. That's the idea that I got. But Mark 25 tells the story, and as do the other gospels, as do Luke, and but in the gospels, the story is told in Mark 25 of a woman who was subject to bleeding, who had an issue of blood. And what impressed me as we were preparing for this broadcast today said that she was under the care, and she tried so many other things, and it said spent all she had. And instead of getting better, only grew worse. She invested in every institutional solution that her cultural ethos proposed was the way to get better, to feel better, and yet it only grew worse. And that worse is complex, Dr. Shepherd, because it's describing a physical condition. But in her culture, it also led to social isolation and social marginalization and even invisibility. And people ignored her and walked past her. She had to keep her distance. And so then it became a financial issue, because the text says she spent all she had. So now she has physical things, and now she has then the social things and the emotional ostracization. And then she has the financial pressure on top of that. And why that came to mind is because there was a late 19th century and early 20th century scholar, author, and educator, actually only the fourth African-American woman in history at her time to receive a doctoral degree, by the name of Anna Julia Cooper. And Dr. Anna Julia Cooper was responding actually to W.E.B. Du Bois's phrase double consciousness, which he used. And so Dr. Cooper says, and I quote this, she says, Black women's consciousness is beyond double consciousness because it is more complex. So she began to make a distinction between African American double consciousness in the male experience, and then consciousness in the African American female experience. She says is more than double consciousness, because we live at the intersection of the race problem and the gender problem in America. So she said we have to deal with racism, sexism, objectification, invisibility, marginalization, and becoming, in terms something you referenced last night, Dr. Shepherd, in terms of the collateral damage. Yes. Of a societal ill. And so that came to mind because we want to talk about today the importance of saying her name, not just, I mean her from countless women who were raped by slave owners, to Reese Taylor, who was raped in 1944 while coming home from church in Alabama, to Henrietta Lacks, to countless women diagnosed needlessly for hysterectomies in the name of eugenics to control Black populations, to Sandra Bland, to the most recent Say Her Name, hashtag Breonna Taylor. Of course, who some legal proceedings became relevant this week. So, Dr. Shepherd, we're talking about the importance of saying her name, and how important is that in your research and in your discussions in this season?
Well, absolutely, Bishop. So thank you again for laying that foundation. When you were referencing the woman with the issue of blood and all that she had done, I'm just reminded of how many women out there, they're doing all they can do to maintain right now. If you look at, and as I was studying this past week, because I have this intense, I don't want to use urge, but just this intense, overwhelming study that has come over me to make sure that when I am presenting now, I am looking at the mental health of the Black female. I've never felt like this before, where I have to make sure that as I'm approaching certain subjects right now, and God will do this for me. There's a certain populations or there's certain topics that will just kind of overwhelm me. And I know it's hard to describe. So if anybody out there who doesn't really know me, you'll get a chance to know, because there's just certain things that happen that God will lay on my heart that I want to study so that I can see how I can help alleviate some of that. And, Bishop, as you were talking, it's just really feeling the weight of what so many Black women carry. In this, we talk about how many of the Black women wear a S, the Superman S, or now the Superwoman S on their chest. And it's the weight of that S that has so many people right now weighed down. And when I say people, I mean the Black female. They are the largest population within our labor force today. Did you know that? Black women are the largest population within our labor force today. That is an important stat and an important statement, because without Black women, our country would not be here where it is. They helped in maintaining the infrastructure of this country. And it has been seen so much this year because Black women are essential employees, essential workers. So why is that important, Dr. Shepherd? We've been telling people to stay at home in order to be able to avoid the coronavirus. But how can the labor force, the people who are the largest population of labor force, stay at home and our country not run? So even in my practice, I have had to adjust in my practice how I see certain children, because they're mothers, the women who run the households. And even when there are two sets of parents, or one set of parents, I should say, in the household, still the woman tends to be the one who helps guides and helps with the operations of those appointments. And so I've had to adjust, because sometimes I have to see children on the weekends, because the mother has to go out and still maintain some type of employment so that it can be finances coming into the home. And that weight of what is occurring to our Black women right now, it is so, I already used the word overwhelming, but daunting. And that weight is just, I keep using that word weight for a purpose, because it's heavy. And even as I've been having this having this this need to make sure that the mental health of the Black women are okay or is okay. I really come across some women who look good, who are functioning, but they're not okay. They're not okay. And so what today we want to talk about is how we do not allow our women to become collateral damage. The definition of collateral damage is injury inflicted on something other than an intended target. Wow. Right. It is injury inflicted on something other than the intended target. And let's look at the case of Breonna Taylor. This is a young woman who was asleep in her own home with her male friend, with her boyfriend. And the police raided their house, no knock warrant. And the boyfriend shot because he thought there was an intruder breaking into their home. And when he shot, from what I'm understanding, that he actually hit a police officer in the leg, and they returned fire. And in returning fire, they killed this woman. And what we're hearing right now from the Attorney General, and again, it just breaks my heart, from the Attorney General from Kentucky, is that her death was collateral damage. It was an injury inflicted on her death, even though she was not the intended target. Man, that's heavy. And it's heavy because so many people can identify with what occurred here. That could have been your daughter. That could have been your mother. That could have been someone who you love and respect, who was in their bed and now are dead, didn't even have a chance to defend themselves, and now seen as collateral damage. Something is wrong with that picture because no one is now left responsible for her death. And that, Bishop, is an issue.
Yes. And that's the importance of talking about it, and that's why we're starting it off. But let me add that we are blessed to have several women who are part of our Spirit and Mind audience, and so we welcome you to write your reactions and what you're feeling in the light of this most recent situation. Because it's not the first act of collateral damage, but in a system that needs some work. But if you could write down, we welcome your responses. How does it feel as an African American woman? I say that because some of the commentators and others have been talking about that this case, that when you have the only person tried is tried for what they did to a wall and not to a woman, that it again reinforces that idea of your collateral damage, you're expendable, you're invisible, you're less than important. And that's Dr. Shepherd and I want you to know the whole point of the Say Her Name piece is to let it resonate. And today we want to say that as Black men, we're listening and we hear you. We don't propose to have every answer. We're going to welcome your commentary as women of color in what you're processing and what you're feeling in these moments, because you have firsthand experience. And we'll have some guests on in the future to speak from a more direct experiential point. But we want to hear your reactions in this season. We also want to highlight some of the details in terms of Kenneth Walker, Breonna Taylor's friend. He was a licensed gun owner. He did have his permit. And he was totally doing what perhaps some would say standing your ground. At least to his mind, someone is knocking on your, or really busting in in the middle of the night. And of some reports say that of the 12 witnesses, most of them concur that they did not hear any kind of announcement of the police, of those who were in proximity. And so then there's the challenging conflicts in the reporting and the request to see the documents of the actual transactions and the mistakes that are in the report. And so it just kind of raises concern and suspicion that if there weren't already this pre-existing narrative, but because there is all these areas of wonder about it. And so 26-year-old EMT worker. And so this certainly is a tragedy. And it's not just, lest you would think that it is just being exaggerated. It is important to talk about just a couple of things. According to the National Center on Violence Against Women in the community, here are some statistics from the National Center on Violence Against Black Women. For every Black woman who reports rape, at least 15 Black women do not report. 1 in 4 Black girls will be sexually abused before the age of 18. 1 in 5 Black women are survivors of rape. 35% of Black women experience some form of contact sexual violence in their lifetime. 40 to 60% of Black women report being subjected to coercive contact by age 18. The Institute for Women's Policy Research reports that more than 20% of Black women, again, are subjected to these abusive situations. Black women are 2.5 times more likely to be murdered by men than their white counterparts. So just in case you would believe that this is just exaggerated narrative, it is also noted that by age 60, a Black woman's body is likely to have aged 5 to 7 years faster than white counterparts. And these are just some of the results of this society and the collateral damage piece that Dr. Shepherd had so poignantly raised. And so it's important that we acknowledge this. And part of the frustration is the avoidance or the minimalization of it by some parts of our society, as if it's exaggerated or being made up. But the data would beg to differ. And I would say that's part of the frustration and the battle with that. Would you not, Dr. Shepherd? Or
absolutely. And I join in with Bishop. We want to be clear before I even make some other points. We want to be clear that we celebrate the Black female. We want to let you know that we are concerned about you. And that's important to hear from a Black man. That's really important to hear from any person. But in this day and time, we need to hear that from a Black man. We are concerned, and we know that we have to speak positive things to you because of all the things that we have already outlined that you are carrying. Let me just share with you just a couple things that even as I continue to have just this resurgence of wanting to make sure that the Black women in my life, the ones who I am in touch with, the ones who I am able to see are okay. Did you not know 65 years to the day that the people who murdered Emmett Till were acquitted on the same day as the people who murdered Breonna Taylor were acquitted? That is something to think about. 65 years difference, but yet here we have someone who was allegedly doing something to someone else, ends up being murdered. And now here we have a young woman who was murdered, and no one, again, is going to be held responsible for her murder. There are 2 justice systems that reside within our country, and that has got to change. There are two justice systems. I'm going to say it again as slowly as I can, that reside within the United States of America. One for blacks and one for non-blacks. And that's just real. And I understand why raising a child in this country is so difficult and anxiety provoking, because we recognize that even 65 years later, there's a difference. There's not a difference in what occurred, to our Black youth. Emmett Till was a young man at the time. Breonna Taylor, 26 years old. Their life, they have so much life to live, and now is gone. Listen to this also. We have to remember that we are responsible for what occurs in our community. The police are not above the law, and we have to remind our legislators and our governmental officials that just because you go through the police academy, you're not above the law. And I was really thinking about that a lot last night, Bishop, because how is it that I, as a physician, can be held to a certain standard after going through years of training, and let me make one mistake, and even if I make that mistake, I'm going to have to face the music potentially if I don't apologize, if I don't show some type of sorrow, and even in doing so, that's why I have to have malpractice insurance, because if something occurs, then I have to make sure that I'm covered, even if it was something that I did not intentionally want to do or end up doing, and it hurts someone, God forbid, kills someone. They're going to go after me. How is it that you have a physician who doesn't? Man, I hope I'm making this analogy clear. How a physician could end up causing someone's death, and I mean, people go after them, and yet here we have a police unit, and I'm for the police now, but they don't nearly go through all the years of practice that a physician goes through. Yet they are licensed to carry a gun, and yet they have just as much power as to really making sure that someone's life is protected or preserved. And they have this union, and you can't touch them. That's a problem, you all. We've got to change that. The police are not above the law. And I have to say that as strongly as possible. We must hold people accountable. No longer are we going to allow collateral damage to occur within our neighborhoods without saying something about it. And so that's where we rise up. That's where we have to say enough is enough, and we have to make sure we make a stance. So last point here, the Kentucky's only female legislator. Now, if you live in the state of Kentucky, you kind of know what that environment is like. I have friends who live in Kentucky, and I don't know if any of them are out here watching. So I ain't talking about your state, but we know what Kentucky is like. All right, bluegrass country. Yeah. That's where Mitch McConnell and a lot of those other folks are from. They only have one Black female legislator. She ended up getting arrested on felony rioting charges at a protest for Breonna Taylor. Wow. Come on now. This is your only female legislator. And let me tell you, I am proud of her, because I was thinking about that, Bishop. I was saying, what would I do? And this year, again, and some of you who have watched the show, you've heard me say this. This is a different year for me. And I make no apologies for it. I'm making a stance. I'm going to make sure that what I believe in is heard, and I'm going to be confident in what I stand for. And this female legislator stood for what she knew was right, even if it meant now she has a felony on her record. And I was thinking to myself, would I do the same thing? And I had to answer the question, yes. Because if it means standing up and being arrested, now you want to go and, get me stirred up now. You think about the people within the Bible who had to make a stand for what is right. And they got arrested, and it didn't always feel good. We have to know that no longer will collateral damage, I'm going to keep saying it like that, will be acceptable in our communities. We demand change.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And thank you. Some of our Spirit of Mind family, thank you. I see you beginning to chime in. And yes, we do indeed celebrate our queens and the weight they carry as Black women. And we begin by acknowledging that. That may, I don't want to minimize the importance of acknowledging that, because one of the things that is a complaint and adds to the trauma is this acting, this dismissal, or the invisibility syndrome, acting as if we don't see it, acting as if it's not there. I was profoundly changed a few years ago by a book by what is her name? Terry, it's going to come back. Terry Williams.
Heard of her, yes.
Yeah, sociologist, social worker. One of the most profound books I've read in the last several years is called Black Pain. Subtitle is "It Only Looks Like We're Not Hurting." It talks, and it's about Black women and the experience of being a Black woman, and talks about the increased susceptibility to physical ailments, eventually, and the what they call, this is not my term, but the myth of the strong Black woman, SBW myth, is, and by myth it doesn't mean that it's not true, but it means myth in the academic sense of saying we're trying to make meaning for a life's experience. And so the strong Black woman myth is saying that we have to appear invincible just to do what for some is the minimal to exist on a certain kind of level. Takes more effort, takes more energy, takes more patience. And so we want to acknowledge that those things are real, that they are not exaggerations. And that's what today is about, that we thought it important as men to say that we hear it, particularly in this week. Yesterday was National Daughters Day, and so we have sisters and daughters and aunts and mothers, and so it's important that we hear that. And then again this week with the Breonna Taylor ruling, it just needed to be acknowledged and said and dealt with. Again, we understand, and I know that others who bring that point, that police officers were doing what they do, and they come in and somebody fired at them, but somebody fired at them because they were coming in. And again, the woman becomes the collateral damage, which again is your such an appropriate term here, and such an unacceptable reality. It's both appropriate in identifying it, and it's both and it's unacceptable, which is why we have to begin acknowledging it, talking about it, and doing things to prevent it. I know that the no-knock law was changed in Kentucky, but what else can we do? How else can we move on from here? I know that there was some financial settlement that was reached, but how else can we move on from here? Because money isn't everything, particularly when we're dealing with these kind of existential losses, and they represent so much more. So this is why we're having this conversation. Dr. Shepherd, you look like you got a thought.
Yeah, so you mentioned about the National Daughters Day. Yesterday was also the National Day of Remembrance for those who have been murdered.
Yes.
I was fortunate enough to be a part of a ceremony yesterday through Roberta's House. Roberta's House is a place here in Baltimore. Actually, I have two sites, one in Baltimore City and one down in PG County, Prince George's County, which is in the state of Maryland. And we were able to recognize and call out the names of all those who have been murdered in the year of 2020. You would think that in the midst of a pandemic, we would have a decrease in the amount of homicides in many of our cities. Nope. Actually, it's on par to even set some records. Something's wrong with that picture. When you hear some people talk about the crime in the cities, they really are correct. Now, the reason why it might be a little bit, different, we might differ, on that opinion, but it is true. And so the National Day of Remembrance, and I think it's appropriate to mention even right now, because when you look at what happened to Breonna Taylor, she was killed. So this is another National Day of Remembrance. And even as we scrolled through the names yesterday, to see the number of women, to see the pictures of women who were killed, to see them and then some of them had their child with them when they were killed. The child was collateral damage. So yes, we have to again say their name. Bishop, I'm just going to just turn just slightly here. There's other collateral damage that is occurring even during this time. Again, I am a student of the God's word, but I'm also a student of other literature and reading, especially during this time, to understand what is happening in our society. We want to make mention because this affects our Black women. Universities are now who have switched to remote learning, and Bishop, you can talk about that, but they're not reducing their tuition. So universities now are not all of them, but many of them have switched to virtual learning, some type of hybrid learning, but they are maintaining the same amount when it comes to tuition, the expenses. And I understand why that is. I don't necessarily agree with it, but yes, I understand why that is. So what's happening is low income students, which include many of our Black females, that's where I'm going with this point, are dropping out at twice the rate of their peers from families with incomes over $75,000. That is an important point to mention right here, because that is part of the collateral damage that is being inflicted upon us as Black people, Black men, Black women, as we are encountering the financial long-term effects of this pandemic. It is unreal. It saddens my heart that we have Black men and women who want to do better, we want to learn, who want to go higher, who want to expand their thinking and education, but they can't because the colleges have remained at the same level of what they required as far as tuition, and have not adjusted during the pandemic. You might well say, well, Shepherd, help me understand. I just talked about a little bit earlier how the women are essential employees. So if they are trying to go to school and work, they now may have to work more because they're an essential employee, because other people may have gotten sick or may have gotten dropped out, or they may have lost their job on the flip side. So now they were going to school, but they were paying for school through the job. And let me be clear about this. There have been certain people within the administration who's talked about how unemployment is going down. Unemployment has not gone down. Do your research when it comes to Blacks during this time. Blacks remain in double-digit numbers. That's never good for unemployment. It's remained about 13, 14%. That's a lot of Black people who are unemployed. Yes, it's very different from what it was last year. It was in single digits last year, but it has now doubled due to and it's not going down. It's going down in the white communities. People don't make that differentiation, but we need to understand that as Black men and women, and again, we're focusing on Black women today, but we are seen as collateral damage. Man, I'm starting to feel something stir up within me. I'm thinking about our conversations over the last couple of weeks. We have to stand up for what is right. We cannot allow people just to come into our neighborhoods when it is election time and speak all these different things and about stimulus plans, what they're going to do for the Black community. And then 4 years later, we go back and check it off and look at the list and nothing has been done. That means they view us as collateral damage. I'm going to drive that point home today. I no longer will be viewed as collateral damage. No. So, I wanted to bring up those points. And I know, Bishop, you can speak to that, you being a university professor. But I tell you, these are some trying times.
Yeah, it is. And it's poignant and relevant to Black women. There's a lot of data that suggests that Black women are the largest group of college degree recipients. And now this does affect those statistics you just gave. I'm going to kind of merge that into something that one of our guests said. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Sonora Baker, who said, yeah, we have to talk about it and vote. And that is so important, meaning we have to talk about these issues and we have to hold our public officials accountable. We have to ask where they stand on these issues. Where do you stand on additional police training? It doesn't vilify. It doesn't mean we're anti law enforcement, not at all. To do that doesn't mean you're against law and order. What it is suggesting, though, is that there's sometimes a presupposition or an implicit bias that the law is perfect and the order is in order. But there is there is an experience in America for Black people in particularly and minorities in general that do not have that implicit bias. That just because it's the law doesn't mean it's right and perfect, if you will. So it needs to be reformed. The whole purpose of law reform and looking at the order simply means a way of doing things, but the way of doing things can be biased and can have flaws. And so we have to revisit those things and to just say law and order. We've kind of created this overly reductionist thing where you're either for law and order or you're anarchist. no order. And there is a medium here, but we've kind of gone to these two extremes on these on this continuum here because it's marketable. And again, in this post-truth era, it's like you're either one or the other. No, you can be for law and order, but still say that the laws and the order need to be revisited and even reformed for equity and to remove implicit biases and to be improved. So that's what we have to begin to ask our public officials and challenge them on these kind of things and exercise our rights. Now, even as it concerns the education system, my teaching experiences in HBCUs. I'm blessed to serve in two HBCUs, colleges in general basically have three sources of funding: government funding, state funding, and students / parents, parental funding. Right. And so they're the three forms. And so it matters when officials make decisions on university funding. In here in Maryland, where we are, there's a big discrepancy over the underfunding of historically Black colleges and universities. Right. One of the important roles of HBCUs, they're not antiquated. As long as we live in a system that has injustices and revisionist history and biased reporting, so that it builds the esteem of our people, it is necessary to know the significant historical figures and contributors to society, not as an elective, but as a part of the standard teaching. And it's important because of what you raised, Dr. Shepherd, that HBCUs have specialized in making ways for the underprivileged. Because just because you don't make a certain amount of money doesn't mean you don't have a great mind.
Right.
And so, but you just need the means and the opportunity. So HBCUs have specialized in creating ways and getting the funding so that money is not the only reason that an intelligent Black person does not get the education that they are so capable of receiving and excelling in. But when you cut that funding, you leave more weight. If the state cuts it, it leaves more weight and more insistence on saying, well, the students got to pick up the difference, which kind of defeats the purpose. So it's a vicious circle. And these budgets are done well before the virus hit. And so they're trying to catch up. So it's a complicated piece. That's it. But we got to stay on top of it because the collateral damage is too expensive a price to pay.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Bishop. You know, I think we have set the stage for what we wanted to do. I really do believe that it was meant for us to set that stage and not to have necessarily the Black females who are looking to have move forward on our future shows. Because you need to see two Black men celebrating Black women. I wholeheartedly believe that, who care for the Black female. And let me also say something, Bishop, as I was writing, you know, as you see me many times looking down, because I'm writing with something that Bishop does say it, I done stole so many of his notes for sermon. But let me tell you, Bishop, man, you are post-truth era where desired results are greater than truth. My God, today.
Yeah,
I really believe that that's even what prompted, and I hate to say it, I don't like to speak for people, but I really think that has some bearing as to what is happening with the case of Breonna Taylor. There was a desired result that they wanted, and that it bared out more than what the actual truth is. How is it that you have on your body cameras and they're not activated? Come on now. How come we can't get this footage? Or even if they were activated, how come we have no access? How come we can't access the dialogue that occurred within the grand jury when they brought down their verdicts? Come on now. There's something wrong with this. We are looking for desired results greater than truth. And you have to be careful. This is one of the things I learned in medical school, that when you know that you have done something that is wrong, you need to be able to admit it, be man enough, be woman enough to say, I was wrong. I had to learn that lesson. Because anytime when you try to cover up something, again, I go back to the analogy with medicine. I don't understand how in medicine, where people's lives are at stake, and yet in police, lives are at stake too, but yet there's even a difference in how we look at that. Let a doctor try to cover up something, you're going to try to hang that doctor out to dry. Police, it's okay. Something is wrong with that. I mean, that thing is really hitting me right now, Bishop. It's just messed up. It's messed up. Yeah. I learned very quickly, if I cannot tell you the truth, or if I did something wrong, then I need to be able to own up to it and say, I did something wrong. Even if the desired result is not what I'm looking to get, at least I know I have truth on my side. And so another important point today is don't allow your desired results outweigh what the truth is. Remember that, and that'll keep you in line every time that a situation occurs. I'm done, Bishop.
Yeah. Well, that's it for today. But that you raised something good. Post-truth. I just want to share that. Just to not to nerd out on you, but post-truth was the Oxford Dictionary's word of the year for 2016. Dictionaries get together and say what do they every year say what is the most relevant word for this year. The 2016 word of the year by Oxford Dictionaries was post-truth, because again, the impact matters more than the accuracy. And that's why you see a flipping of narratives in so many different ways. And I don't mean this as a personal attack. It's just I'm an analytical mind. And so when I make these observations, it's not a political statement, it's analytical. So that's why you see these different things. Our current in 2016, the changed administrations, and the thing was drain the swamp, and all of the language was on distrust of institutions. If the FBI said they found something, that's not right. You can't trust the FBI. You can't trust the CDC. Everything's infiltrated with all of these different people, because it doesn't matter if it's true. It matters if it's effective. Then when we talk about this reforming and re-educating our police system, then you change to no, law and order are institutions. And so now the person who was anti-institution and draining the swamp says, no, this swamp don't need to be drained. This swamp was good, and not even a swamp. Because so now it's back on law and order. So the platform that started as drain the swamp is now pro law and order, because it doesn't matter if it's accurate, it matters if it's effective.
Right.
That's the example of post-truth in this case. And so somebody said it, we started it. Women, we want you to know we hear you. We want you to know that we support you. We want you to know that we are with you. And we thank you for your observations today. And yes, we must advocate, as Anthony Rosen said, for our Black women. And so thank you so much for being with us on Spirit in Mind today. And we look forward to your continuing commentary as we discuss this subject. Amen. Thank you for watching Spirit in Mind.
All right. See y'all next week.